So today we are in the basement and we are going to show you an excellent way to store beets for long-term use and storage. Well, it's May 15th, so this seems like an odd thing to film right now, but we wanted to show it because these beets, and this is Detroit red beets that we're going to show you first, and sugar beets, have been in storage in our basement since we harvested them. I'm going to say it was sometime in October. I think we harvested some of the sugar beets a little later than others, but so they have been in storage for a long time, but we wanted to show you how we do it and essentially what kind of shape they're in after this long storage. So the first thing to consider with beets is the container you put them in. One of the things that will deteriorate beets over storage, over the winter storage, fairly quick is moisture loss. So you want a container that retains moisture. And what we have is essentially plastic Rubbermaid type totes. They work really well for this purpose because they retain some moisture. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up and we'll explain a little bit of this as we dig out some beets. So this is our container of Detroit red beets. As I open it up, you'll see at this point in time they are starting to sprout. See if I can dig one out here. And that's okay. So this is not a large beet, but you can see if I squeeze that, it's quite solid.
They're staying very firm.
They stayed very firm. Now, prior to storing them, we did cut off the greens. So at this point in time, you are starting to get some growth. But you cut off the greens, but you did not damage
the top. We cut off the greens, but we didn't damage the
crown.
Yeah, it just cut off any excess above the crown where you can still squish it together.
And what you'll see here is you do leave a bit of a tail for the leaves. But all we've done, we pulled these out of the garden. They cured for a couple of hours. We didn't leave them for long just so that the dirt on the outside sort of dried out. And we basically brought them right over and put them right in with just wood shavings. Now, I'm not going to dig all these out, but I'll show you on the sugar beets. When we layered them, you put them in so they're not touching, essentially, is one of the big pieces. So you put a layer down, then put more shavings on top. Put another layer down, put more shavings on top. So there's not quite as many in here as what it looks, but it's still amazing that these beets have kept as well as they have. Now we have been pulling some.
These are what, 7 months old now?
I think that's what it ends up being, yeah. And we've pulled some out and eaten them. And now, granted, they're not as tender as they would be, perfectly right from the garden, but they're pretty darn close. So that was our Detroit red beets, and these are still all destined for food. We're not going to be able to save seeds from them this year because we are saving seeds from our sugar beets. So we're going to open them up next. So I'm going to open this up here and see what we've got going. So the first thing off the top here is we know we made a bit of a mistake by putting this top layer on because they weren't buried, essentially. And I can see
they had no shavings over top of them.
No, exactly. And although they're all still in great shape, if I bring this one out and
they're very firm.
They're very firm. So it looks a little worse than it actually is. But we're going to dig down into this and sort of see what the next layers are like. Now, a lot of these top ones were originally destined to be turned into sugar, so these won't be replanted, but they're basically in the same state. You've got a little more.
It's only the tops. It's like they sprouted tops, then the tops have died back because they were exposed, right? Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see when you go down to the next layer.
I just move these over and see what's...
if they did the same thing. Yeah, see, that one's better.
Yeah, see, these ones that were buried stayed in a bit better shape. They didn't start to sprout, basically. So, and you can see we left the dirt on them, etc., and it really didn't make any difference, and they are still extremely firm. So a lot of these are going to get processed here shortly, but we are going to pick through them and select out some of the best ones. We'll probably show you them in a future video, but really that's all it is as far as storing beets. It's extremely simple, and it's amazing how well they store. So beets have been one of those things that we're planning to upscale a little bit because we can grow them really well, and
Apparently.
we can store them very well too. So for this preservation method, it didn't show super well because we didn't dig them all out, but
it showed that it worked.
it did show that it worked. What we've basically done is, in our box, we put a layer of shavings down, just a little bit to keep them off the bottom of the box. Then you put your first layer of beets, and you want to make sure they're not touching. So depending on the size of your beet affects how many you can get into each layer. Then you backfill that layer and fill all the spaces around them with the wood shavings. Now, we have heard of moistening the wood shavings, or like getting them kind of just damp. We didn't bother with that, and after looking at them now at this point, I think that was probably wise, because they do still respire a bit. They're still alive. There's still some moisture ends up in the tote, but because the shavings were dry, we don't have any sopping wet parts of the storage bin, which is good, because then we're not really getting, aside from what was on the top of the sugar beet container where it was exposed, we really don't have any growth or any of that sort of thing. They've pretty much stayed dormant, and a lot of that moisture probably was coming from those top beets, because the Detroit Reds didn't have the same issue. Another thing that's really nice about this is it's fairly lightweight, so the shavings don't weigh much. You can do this where you fill it up outside, bring it in the house, carry it up and down the stairs, and it's not as hard to deal with as, say, sand. Sand could also work, but sand's a lot heavier. You can also use this afterwards, whether you use it as mulch around a tree or bedding in the chicken coop, etc. You can kind of reuse these shavings one more time after they've stored your beets. So it's definitely something that we learned about fairly recently. It's worked really well. We're very happy with the results, and it's a great way to extend your beet harvest exceptionally long after they've been taken out of the garden. So anyways, stay tuned for more beet related content, because in our opinion, beets are pretty awesome.
They're one of squash's best friends.